Picture yourself standing on a dusty hill overlooking Athens, the Parthenon gleaming in the distance under a relentless Mediterranean sun. The air carries the scent of olive groves and the faint echo of a bustling agora, where ideas are traded as fiercely as olives or wine. This is ancient Greece, a place we're taught to revere as the cradle of democracy, philosophy, and art. But as an independent historian, I've spent years digging into the stories that don't make it onto marble plaques or classroom chalkboards. The ones too raw, too strange, too human. Today, I'm inviting you to walk with me through the shadows of this civilization, to uncover truths that are as unsettling as they are captivating. Let's start where the ground feels shakiest. The institution that propped up Greece's glory. Slavery wasn't just a part of ancient Greece, it was its heartbeat. In Athens, the city we celebrate for its thinkers, the silver mines of Laurion were a living hell. Enslaved men, women, and children toiled in suffocating tunnels, often chained, their lives as disposable as the tools they wielded. The silver they bled for built the navy that defeated Persia, funded the temples that still awe us. Without their suffering, there'd be no golden age. Cross over to Sparta, and the picture darkens further. The Helots, an entire people enslaved, outnumbered their Spartan masters tenfold. They tilled the fields, fed the warriors, and lived under a constant threat. A single defiant glance could spell death, because Sparta's elite knew their power was fragile, always one revolt away from collapse. That fear birthed something chilling, the Cryptia. Imagine young Spartan boys, barely men, sent into the night with daggers and a mission: hunt Helots. Not randomly, but strategically. Target those who seemed too strong, too bold, too dangerous. These youths, trained to be warriors, were tasked with spying, intimidating, even killing, all to keep the Helots broken. Picture a Helot farmer, working his field, knowing any rustle in the dark could be his end. This wasn't just cruelty, it was a system, a way to maintain control through terror. Yet, it reveals Sparta's paradox. A society so obsessed with strength that it bred paranoia, turning its own sons into predators. This wasn't unique to Sparta. In Athens, enslaved people were everywhere, cooking, building, rowing the triremes that wanted salamis. They were the unseen engine of a society that prided itself on freedom. As a historian, I find this contradiction gripping. How could a people who gave us Socrates and Sophocles justify such brutality? They didn't just accept slavery. They made it mundane, as natural as the sea or the stars. To them, it was the price of greatness. But there's another layer to this, one that pulls us deeper into Greece's strangeness. Sparta's obsession with strength didn't stop at controlling Helots. It shaped their very approach to life, love, and family. In Sparta, marriage wasn't about romance. It was about survival. Picture a grizzled warrior, past his prime, with no strong sons to carry his name. He might invite a younger, fitter man into his home, not to fight, but to father children with his wife. This wasn't scandal, it was duty. Sparta needed warriors, and if a man couldn't produce them, he'd step aside. The wife, too, was bound to this, her role defined by the state's needs. Consent was shaped by social pressure, less about individual choice than collective survival. Other Greeks, like the Athenians, whispered about this, calling it immoral or bizarre. But to Spartans, it was rational. Loyalty wasn't to a spouse, but to the city, and personal jealousy was a luxury they couldn't afford. This practice wasn't some oddity, it was Spartan identity. It blurred the lines of fidelity, prioritizing the community over the individual. As we stand here, overlooking Athens, it's tempting to judge, to see Sparta's ways as alien. But let's hold that thought and step into another Greek city, where love and loyalty took on a different, equally startling form, one that turned passion into a weapon of war. Let's leave the rugged hills of Sparta behind and wander to Thebes, a city often eclipsed by its flashier neighbors. Here, in the heart of Greece, something extraordinary took root: the Sacred Band, a military unit like no other. Imagine a few hundred elite soldiers, chosen not just for their skill, but for their bonds. These men were lovers, paired deliberately because the Thebans believed that love would make them invincible. A soldier wouldn't flee if it meant leaving his beloved behind. He'd fight to the death, driven by devotion. This wasn't just a romantic notion, it was proven on the battlefield. At Leuctra in 371 BCE, the sacred band shattered Sparta's legendary army, a victory that echoed through history. Even in their final stand at Chaeronea, they died together, unbroken, their legacy sealed in blood and courage. This wasn't some outlier in Greek culture. Relationships between men were woven into the social fabric, seen as natural, even noble. In Athens and Sparta, they often took the form of mentorships between older men and younger boys, known as pederasty. In Sparta, these bonds were about forging warriors, teaching boys to endure and fight. In Athens, they could blend intellectual guidance with a more acknowledged sexual element. Philosophers like Plato grappled with this, sometimes praising the spiritual connection, other times condemning physical indulgence. The Greeks didn't see these relationships through our modern lens. They were a complex mix of education, loyalty, and power. That power dynamic is where things get murky. An adult male citizen held all the cards, while a teenage boy, even a freeborn one, was subordinate. Consent was often shaped by expectation, and historians today note that what the Greeks called mentorship could, at times, cross into coercion. This isn't about casting stones, but understanding a society that saw these bonds as formative, even as they debated their ethics. As a historian, I'm drawn to this tension, a culture that celebrated love and wisdom, yet couldn't escape the imbalances of its time. Let's shift to something less intimate, but no less strange. Athens' peculiar democratic experiment, ostracism. Picture the agora, alive with citizens, their voices a chaotic symphony. Once a year, they'd gather to vote on question. Is anyone too dangerous to stay? Not for crimes, but for influence or ambition. If they chose to act, each man scratched a name on a pottery shard, an ostracan. The one with the most votes was exiled for 10 years. No trial, no defense, just gone. They kept their property, their citizenship, but they had to leave. This wasn't punishment, it was prevention, a way to stop tyrants before they rose. Even heroes like Themistocles, who saved Greece from Persia, could find themselves cast out if the winds of politics shifted. Ostracism fascinates me because it's democracy at its rawest, powerful but flawed. It gave the people a voice, but also a weapon to settle scores. Yet it worked, keeping Athens stable through turbulent decades. It's a reminder that even their greatest ideas came with shadows. As we stand in Thebes, watching the ghosts of the sacred band fade, let's turn to another Greek custom, one that bound strangers together under the watchful eyes of the gods, pulling us into a world where hospitality was both sacred and dangerous. Now, imagine a dusty road winding through Greece, a traveler knocking at your door as dusk falls. In ancient Greece, this wasn't just a moment of courtesy. It was xenia, a sacred law overseen by Zeus himself. You'd welcome this stranger, offer food, shelter, even gifts, treating them as a potential god in disguise. In return, they respected your home. This wasn't optional, it was divine mandate. Myths warned of hosts who spurned guests and faced ruin, their families cursed for generations. Xenia wasn't just kindness. It was survival in a world without inns or law beyond the city walls. It forged bonds between strangers, tying families and cities through mutual trust. But there was a catch. Break Xenia, and you invited disaster. A mistreated guest could spark a feud, their kin seeking blood revenge. Even in war, Xenia could pause hostilities as warriors honored past hospitality. This custom reveals a Greece of contradictions, capable of cruelty. Think of the Krypteia or abandoned infants, yet bound by sacred rules of generosity. It's as if the gods demanded balance, insisting that kindness temper the harshness of life. As we linger on this road, the traveler's silhouette fading, let's step into a louder, wilder Greece, where festivals and punishments blur the line between reverence and revelry. Picture a city alive with festival fervor, the air thick with incense and laughter. The Adonia unfolds. Women mourning Adonis' death with wails that shift to rituals of desire and rebirth. Or the Dionysian festivals, where men parade with massive phallic symbols, their body songs echoing through the streets. These weren't mere celebrations. They were sacred, tying sexuality to fertility and divine favor. To the Greeks, this was life's pulse, unashamed and communal. Aristophanes' comedies captured this spirit, mocking everyone from Socrates to the gods with crude humor that had Athenians roaring. Theater wasn't just art. It was a mirror, letting the city laugh at its flaws. This freedom to jest, to push boundaries, was democracy's heartbeat. But this openness didn't extend to all. Athenian women lived secluded lives, their honor tied to their husbands. Adultery laws were brutal. A man could kill his wife's lover if caught, while she faced divorce or worse. Men, though, faced lighter consequences for their affairs, a glaring double standard. Yet hetairai like Aspasia defied this, mingling with philosophers, wielding wit and influence. They were a paradox in a patriarchal world, admired and scandalized. As a historian, I'm drawn to these women, proof that even in confinement, some found ways to shine. Now, let's face something darker: punishment. Stoning was common for treason or sacrilege, the crowd itself the executioner. In Sparta, cliffs claimed criminals and unwanted infants. Poison, like Socrates' hemlock, was for high-profile cases. Crucifixion or impalement, though rare, marked the worst crimes. But the true horror was denying burial, dooming the soul to wander without peace. Corpses left to rot in public were a warning. Justice didn't end with death. Burial rites, by contrast, were sacred. A coin for Charon, the ferryman, ensured passage to Hades. These rituals tied life to the afterlife, a pact with the gods for peace and favor. Let's move to a place of mystery, Delphi. The Pythia, Apollo's priestess, sat above a chasm, her trance-induced words guiding kings and commoners. Her prophecies were cryptic, forcing mortals to unravel their meaning. Delphi wasn't just spiritual, it was political, a neutral ground where Greece's fractured cities sought wisdom. This leads us to a rare moment of unity, the Olympic Games. During this sacred truce, enemies laid down arms, letting athletes compete under Zeus' gaze. Violating this was sacrilege, and even bitter rivals honored it, showing that faith could bridge divides. As we stand amidst this fleeting harmony, let's enter the final stretch, where healing, philosophy, and defiance weave the last threads of Greece's story. We've reached a quieter Greece, one of healing and thought. Sanctuaries of Asclepius offered hope to the sick, who slept in sacred chambers, seeking dreams of cures. Priests prescribed herbs or diets, sometimes urging contact with temple snakes, believed to hold divine power. These rituals blended faith and reason, laying roots for medicine. Philosophy, too, was healing for the mind. Plato taught in the Academy's groves. Aristotle debated while strolling the Lyceum. Socrates argued in the Agora, pulling strangers into his quest for truth. This wasn't elitism. It was a shared pursuit, making philosophy Greece's soul. Women, too, found unique roles. In Sparta, girls trained like boys, preparing to bear warriors. On Crete, rituals like the marriage abduction of young men, symbolic mentorships, forged social bonds. These customs, odd to us, were about survival. Even Spartan weddings, with brides shaved and dressed as men, served a purpose, easing warriors into marriage. Love was secondary to duty, a reflection of Sparta's relentless focus on strength. As we stand in Athens' Agora, the voices of merchants and philosophers fading, let's reflect. Ancient Greece wasn't just a civilization. What lingers is their courage to question, to create, to live boldly. They didn't hide their contradictions. They embraced them. As a historian, I hear their voices in every shard, every ruin. If this journey gripped you, hit that like button and subscribe for more dives into history's shadows. Drop a comment. What Greek custom shocked you most? Let's keep the conversation alive. See you in the next video, where we'll uncover more truths that time tried to bury.